Hello everyone, I am Adolfo from Alianza Colombo Inglesa, and today we will be looking at the third part of our series of graphs with the explanation on how to write the body paragraphs. Now that we have written our paraphrasing of the statement and the overview, we should write the content of the body paragraphs. The body paragraphs will present in detail, with numbers, with specific information about the years, the information that is presented in the graph. To organize our body paragraphs, we should keep in mind the groups of information that we identified previously. In this case, in our example, we defined two groups of information, each one talking about two different countries. So that means that each of the groups should be described in two separate body paragraphs. Now, if one of these groups presents the most relevant information, it should go at the beginning. This should be the first body paragraph. In our example, the first group contained the highest numbers at the beginning of the period, so that should be established as the first body paragraph. But that, of course, depends on the information presented on each graph. And of course, we should mention the specific numbers referring to the quantities. In our example, we would be talking about metric tons of CO2, and we should be mentioning the years of all of the changes of the highest points, of the lowest points, the points of fluctuation, etc. Now let's begin with the first body paragraph. Of course, the information of this first body paragraph will be related to the first group of data that we created at the beginning of the process. We explained this in detail in the first part of the series, so if you haven't checked that video, we will leave a link in the description so you can check that out. Alright, so this first group refers to the two countries with the highest numbers at the beginning of the period, which are the United Kingdom and Sweden. So, one of the most relevant aspects of this group of data is that these two countries started with the highest amount of CO2 emissions. So this should be a relevant detail that we could mention to start describing the trends. As we can see, we have written the UK and Sweden were the countries with the largest amount of CO2 produced in 1967, the beginning of the period. This is a specific type of information that should be mentioned, or well, must be mentioned, with about 11 and 9 million tons respectively. Now, I'm not only saying that they are the highest numbers, but we are also mentioning the specific figures for this moment in time. That's very, very important. We always need to support every observation of the graph with the specific numbers. And of course, it is recommended to use this kind of structure where if you have two paired pieces of information, we connect them by saying respectively to make a difference between the corresponding numbers to each. But well, let's see now how these two countries are different in terms of their own trends. In the case of Sweden, we can see that a decade later, as we have written here, these countries' emissions peaked at almost 11 million tons. Okay, so this is an important moment to mention. Sweden showed a peak, that means a high number, or the highest number in all of its figures, in that specific moment in time, 1977, so this should be mentioned. We have opted here to say a decade later. Of course, it's possible to say in 1977, and we have also given the specific number, which is 11 million tons of CO2 emitted, followed by, as it says in here, a significant drop which continued for the next 3 decades, leading to about 9 million tons emitted. So it's important not to mention absolutely everything, but only to focus on the most relevant or important changes for each of the countries. In here, the main changes or the main trends would be the peak 10 years after the beginning, and then a subsequent drop for the entirety of the period considered. So those are the focuses of the information for Sweden, the peak and the reduction in the emissions. Let's compare that with the information about the UK. The UK, on the other hand, showed a constant decrease in their CO2 levels, gradually reaching about 9 million tons in 2007. Now, in here we're using a connector of contrast, on the other hand, because Sweden, for example, had a peak and then a drop in their figures, but the UK had only a decrease. There was nothing but a decrease. There were no fluctuations apart from that. So that's the essential trend that we should be describing, that the CO2 levels constantly decreased. And we should mention the final figures, which are 9 million tons emitted in 2007. Now, notice how we're using different expressions to be descriptive about the changes. We're talking about a constant decrease, not only a decrease, but a decrease that is constant, and how it reached 9 million tons. It wasn't abruptly, it wasn't dramatically, it was gradually. So these kinds of words, these adjectives, these adverbs are essential if we want to be clearer about the changes and about the trends that are happening in our graphs. Here we can see how these descriptions of both of these countries of the first group of data look like when they are put together. And so we have our first body paragraph ready to go. The descriptions are done sufficiently. We have included specific numbers and years, which is essential, and we have written 76 words. We're on our way to complete our graph report. And now basically we repeat the process the same way we did with the first body paragraph. We're going to take the second group of data, which is the countries with lowest numbers at the beginning, and we're going to discuss each one of them in detail. Okay, so here we're taking an opportunity not only to start talking about Italy and Portugal, the countries of the second group of data, but also we're going to contrast them with the information of the first body paragraph. Let's see how this is done here. Although CO2 emissions from Italy and Portugal were considerably lower than the previously mentioned countries in 1967, with around 4 and 1 million tons respectively. Okay, so in here our sentence is cut in half. So let's focus first on how we are comparing Italy and Portugal with the previously mentioned countries. And we are saying that these numbers are considerably lower, right? We're comparing them and we're giving the amount, the specific amount of these two, so 4 and 1 million tons respectively for Italy and Portugal. So this is the first half of our description. We have compared Italy and Portugal with the previously mentioned countries. Okay, so let's connect that with the second part. In the first one, we said, although these numbers of Italy and Portugal are significantly lower than Sweden and the United Kingdom, we are saying now that their levels displayed a constant upward trend, which led them to reach almost 8 million tons for Italy and over 5 million tons for Portugal in 2007. Now, in here we're doing something similar to what happened with the UK. In the UK, we had a constant drop, and for these countries, we have a constant upward trend, which is what we have mentioned in here. Their levels showed an upward trend, and we're mentioning the number at the end of the period, right? These countries reached 8 and 5 million tons respectively in 2007. We're mentioning the specific trend of these two countries contrasted with the trends of Sweden and the United Kingdom. And notice how we did that into a single sentence. This is also possible to do, and we'll give you plenty of points because you're using a complex structure for a sentence. This is very important. And we have mentioned the most important figures of the trends for the second group of data. And so this is how our second body paragraph with the remaining two countries should look like all put together. We have mentioned numbers, we have mentioned years, and we have focused on the main trends, which were common for both. So this is a good way to put together information that is very similar and that is just different in terms of numbers. As you see, it is a little bit shorter than the first body paragraph. This one has 51 words. That's not a problem really, because the first group refers to more relevant information. So in here, the focus could be a little bit less. However, if we wanted to extend it a little bit, we could mention something additional, like the fact that Portugal reached almost the same number as Sweden at the end of the period, but that would just be additional. We should keep it concise because remember that you only have 20 minutes to complete this writing. So keep that in mind. Be sure to be concise and to focus only on the main trends and the most important features of the graph so you can finish the graph report on time. Okay, this is essential. And here is our final product, the complete graph report with all of its components, the paraphrasing of the statement, the overview, and the two body paragraphs, totaling a number of 196 words. Right? Notice how we have written more than 150 words. This is essential. We should always keep it above that minimum word limit of 150. So as you can see, this is how the final graph report should look like. Appropriate paragraphing, sufficient description, an overview, and in this way, the task number 1 of academic writing for IELTS is complete. This concludes our series on graphs for IELTS Academic. If you found this series of videos useful, don't forget to hit the like button, to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any other tips regarding the IELTS preparation. You can also share it with anyone who is interested in studying or preparing for the exam. And you can follow us on our social media. You will find the links in the description in case you need to contact us to find more information about how to prepare for the IELTS test. This has been Adolfo. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.